don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click on that like button if you like my video. Also click on that notification bell. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm so glad that you are here. Welcome to my course, Complete VMware vSphere ESXi and vCenter Administration course. Do you know 80% of the corporate operating systems and applications run nowadays on virtualization? Yes. Let me go straight to the point. This course is designed for the following categories of people. Number one, people who wants to change their career to IT. The very first thing they have to do, the first stepping stone they have to go through is the virtualization, because most of the technologies nowadays run on virtualization. Second type of people or category are those people who are already in IT. Maybe you are a system administrator, a database administrator, network engineer, application user, programmer, developer. It does not matter. Anything or all those technologies that you work on, most of the time nowadays, as I said previously, they run on virtualization, and you do need to understand how virtualization or VMware works. The third type or third category of people this course is designed for are those people who actually wants to get certified in VMware, and this course is going to help them significantly. My name is Imran Afzal, and I have over 20 years of IT experience in infrastructure. I have worked with Fortune 500 companies in New York City. I have completed my bachelor's degree from Baruch College, City University of New York, and I did my MBA from New York Institute of Technology. I have been teaching since 2010, and I have some of the most selling and bestseller courses online. I will make sure at the end of this course, you will learn so much about VMware that you will be able to do the administration of VMware, talk about VMware intelligently, and if you have to go for that technical interview, I want you to be able to ace that interview. Fair enough? So what are you waiting for? Let's go ahead and enroll. Hello beautiful people, and welcome to the course overview. I know you're thinking that what am I getting from this course? So please do spend a few minutes with me, and then you will learn and you will find out whether this course is really worth it for you or not. I have broken down this entire course in 10 different modules. Module 1 will cover the introduction, the syllabus we're going over, and you have the option to download that syllabus. In Module 2, we will start off with virtualization. Yes, I don't want you to jump right into the VMware. I want you to first understand what really virtualization is, how it works, the benefits, the basic virtualization terms, the benefits of virtualization, and the companies today in corporate world that deals with the virtualization. What is the difference between cloud and virtualization? Yes, you should know that before you dive into virtualization. And every module that I have is filled with quizzes, handouts, and homework for you to do. In module 3, we will start off with VMware. What is VMware? What is it about? And what are the different products of VMware? We'll go through the player, the ESXi, the vSphere, the importance of VMware. If we are taking VMware, why we are taking this course on VMware. And of course, the quiz, handout, and homework. In Module 4, we'll start with the lab design. How are we going to set up our lab for this course? Then I'll also give you the option on online labs to use. Then we'll talk about downloading, installing VMware Player. We create our first virtual machine. Then we'll go through the ESXi hypervisor download and install. We'll configure that, and then we will access that ESXi server, and we'll go through and explore more on the vSphere dashboard. Module 5 is all about ESXi server. First VM on ESXi. So we have our ESXi server up and running. Now it's time to create our first virtual machine on ESXi server. Install, and we will install Linux operating system on it. I'll show you how to do the management of virtual machine on ESXi. Update the ESXi hostname. This is the time we'll go back and change the hostname. We'll install Windows VM as well on our ESXi server. We'll go through the installing VMware tools, review VMs and modify resources. We'll talk about snapshots. Module 6, it's all about vCenter. Install second ESXi server. And we'll talk about what is vCenter, download, install vCenter server options, install the vCenter, accessing it, management of interface, creating data centers, managing hosts on vCenter. Module 7 comes in the vCenter management. We'll talk about the home page, getting started, monitors, configures, permissions, hosts, clusters, you name it. This course is filled with so much information. Sharing resources comes down to module 8. That is where we're going to migrate the virtual machines with vMotions. We create the VMware cluster. We'll set up the high availability, and I have broken down high availability into 4 different parts. We will do the Linux installation, set up NFS, mount the NFS for our shared data storage, and we'll set up the cluster. We'll talk about the DRS. We'll talk about sequence of starting and stopping the environment, data store clusters. Then in module 9, we'll talk about the VM management on vSphere, cloning, templates, exports and import OVF, organizing VMs, other VM options, fault tolerance, accessing through HTML5. Then coming down to module 10, we'll talk about ESXi command line CLI. So you should also know a few things about command line, how you could access ESXi and run commands. VMware vCenter Converter, vRealize Operation, vRealize Automation. We'll cover briefly what these products are, VMware Community, and resources that you could take advantage of. And we'll have a little bonus lecture. And the last thing, once all these modules are finished, I have given you so many additional resources that you could go through. You could watch the videos that will be really, really helpful. There were so many tons of additional videos that I have provided to you. Now you ask yourself, is this the course that you should be taking? Let's take a look and understand of how physical system configuration works. So in a regular world, as you could see, there is a physical server. A physical server could be like a Dell or HP or any of those manufacturers that build a physical server. On that physical server, what do you do when you get that physical server? You actually install an operating system on top of it. And that operating system could be Windows, could be Linux, or any of the operating system of your choice, right? So once you have your operating system up and running, then the next step is that you go in and install your applications. Of course, without an application, you really don't need a computer. Examples of applications such as Excel, Word, DNS, Apache, NTP, or other corporate level applications such as database, SAP, ERP, and many other applications. Now, there is a problem with this. Suppose you have a physical server with the resources of 16 gig of RAM and 4 CPUs. Then you go in and install the operating system of your choice. And these are the resources, 16 gig and 4 CPU, of course, are given to your entire operating system. But your operating system only needs 4 gig of RAM and 1 CPU, for example. That leaves us 12 gig of RAM and 3 CPU. So now, of course, we have the operating system ready. The next step is to go in and install and configure the application. That application that we are running, for example, requires another 4 gig of RAM and 1 CPU. Now, with having our remaining resources of 12 gig of RAM and 3 CPU, what do we have left with? We have left with 8 gig of RAM and 2 CPU remaining. And that 8 gig and 2 CPUs, they are underutilized. That is where the virtualization born. People sat down and they thought there gotta be a better way to save those resources and fully utilize those resources. We could run multiple applications, we could run multiple operating system on a same physical server. So we don't even have to buy more physical server. We don't have to buy more real estate to rack and stack those physical servers. We could just buy one beefy server, run multiple operating systems on it, and then run multiple applications on it. So that's where the whole virtualization concept came. So now let's look at the virtualization. When virtualization came into being, then what happened? What happened was there's a physical server, same way, running Dell on HP, whichever whoever the manufacturer is. Then you install a virtualization layer on top of it. A virtualization layer from anywhere, like from VMware, from Oracle Virtualization. Then you install operating systems on it. So you could install 2, 3, 4, how many operating system you can, depending on the resources that you have on the physical system. And then on top of those operating systems, you have the application individually run on each of that operating system. Now, what's the advantage? Let's look at the advantage. That's a physical server. Again, going back to 16 gig of memory and 4 CPU, you install a virtualization layer, which takes up all your CPU memory and CPU. Perfect. Then that operating systems you have, then applications, each of that operating system application has 4 gig and 1 CPU. So each of that operating system has given all those resources. What happens then? All resources are fully utilized, not wasted. See how we could take the full advantage of all those resources? So again, one more thing. Remember those days when you have one physical server and one operating system, and then people came up with another idea of, you know what, split the disk in half and let's do dual boot. So one of the partition would run, let's say Linux, and one partition would run Windows. But the problem what was with that is you could run only one operating system at a time. In virtualization, this is the beauty of the virtualization. You don't have to have one operating system run at one given time. You could run both or 3 or 4 operating systems at all times, all at the same time. That's why the virtualization is so important and so beneficial. Again, in layman's term, virtualization is something is really not real, but it is actually real. It is utilizing the system resources and sharing those system resources among all the operating system that runs on that physical server. Hey folks, welcome back. We know what virtualization is. Now let's take a look at how virtualization exactly works. Or it's a software, what exactly that sits on top of the hardware and make it work. So how virtualization works. Let's take a look at our same diagram that we talked about. So there is a physical server. Any physical server, again, it could be Dell or HP. On top of that physical server, usually we install an operating system and then run an application. But in this case, we have to run multiple operating system. So that is why we cannot just install an operating system directly. We will install a virtualization layer on it. That virtualization layer will have operating system and applications on top of it. Now, that virtualization layer consists of a software, a virtualization software, which is often referred to as a hypervisor. In virtualization world, that software that sits on top of the physical server, it's called hypervisor. So please do remember that. It's a program that is made up of a bunch of codes and programming language. And it is also, you could say, an operating system of its own, an operating system that is built by the virtualization manufacturer, or let's say a VMware. VMware created a hypervisor that sits on top of physical server. That hypervisor, they name it, is called ESXi. That's the older version. The newer version is ESXi. We'll talk about that more in detail later on. But anyway, for now, I just want to tell you that virtualization layer is what is it. That's where the magic happens. This is the piece that allows the communication between that virtualization software and physical server, and of course the communication between the operating system that it runs, which are the virtual operating system that runs on top of it. I'll see you in the next lecture. Okay, I think we have a very good understanding of virtualization at this point. Now let's take a look at some of the benefits that a virtualization offer. So this way you will have a complete picture of why we should use virtualization, especially when someone asks you, tell me why would you use a virtualization or a physical system, or what are the advantages? That's why it is very important for you to understand each and every benefits that virtualization has to offer. I'm going to list a few of them, but please remember the list that I am sharing with you is not an exact list. Everyone can reap the benefits of virtualization based on their requirement. So the list that I have is, of course, based on my experience and based on the industry experience as they have listed. Number one is cost. Yes, of course. Why is a cost? Number one benefit for virtualization is because, of course, when you could run multiple operating system on one physical machine, then it's going to save you cost to buy other physical machines, right? So before, or it used to be four physical machines to every operating system. Now you could have one physical machine for four operating system. So you're saving a lot of money on the hardware cost. Then the real estate. When I say real estate is if you had to rack and stack and manage four servers, now you're only racking and stacking only one servers. So a lot less physical maintenance of a machine and a lot less space that's going to be used in your data center. Electricity. Of course, these machines, I don't know if you ever been to a data center before. These machines makes up a lot of noise, takes up a lot of power, they have a lot of fan noise, and it takes a lot of electricity. When you're going to have a lesser hardware, it means less electricity, and of course it goes down back to the cost piece. Then the ease of management. When you have 10 servers to manage as compared to only one server to manage, it's a lot easier to manage just one server. Redundancy, I like that a lot. Redundancy meaning when you have multiple virtual machines running on one physical machine or multiple physical machine or multiple uh, hypervisors, which we'll talk about later, of course, then if a virtual machine is running on hypervisor A and that hypervisor A goes down, it can migrate to the other hypervisor. So that's called redundancy. Faster deployment of machines. So when you need to build a machine, or in the virtualization world it's called a virtual machine, then it's simply a few clicks away. You don't really have to go through the entire process of putting the CD in and go through the command prompt and do the installation from scratch. And nowadays you could deploy a virtual machine just through the template, which is a lot easier, and we'll cover that later. Resources availability. So resource availability meaning, let's say if your machine, the virtual machine that you have spun up, that has only 2 gig of RAM. 2 months from now you realize you need another 2 gig. Then you really don't have to open up that physical box to add that memory DIMM. You could simply add that on the virtualization layer, and it is very simple and very fast. Better testing and performance. If you are testing your code, if you are upgrading your machine, if you are doing the patch management, you could always take a snapshot of your machine and revert back to it. Again, that snapshot is something, a feature that is part of the virtualization technology. We'll talk about that later. Licensing cost as well, whereas you have to pay for 10 different operating systems. For example, if you have 10 Microsoft servers, you have to pay each one of them. But if you run 10 of those servers on a virtualization technology, those vendors, those operating system vendors will give you a lot of benefits on the licensing cost. So these are the few benefits that I have listed. Again, this list is not the list that you say, okay, this is the only list. You might have more based on your own experience, based on the industry standards, but this is the main list or primary list that I have seen that everybody take advantages of. Now, by looking at these lists or benefits of this virtualization, you could tell right away, yes, you want the virtualization, and you know for sure the virtualization gives a huge advantage over physical layout of your infrastructure. Hello everyone, let's take a look at the difference between virtualization and cloud. We're going to be learning a lot about virtualization, but I think it's at this time we could also understand some distinction between the virtualization and cloud. And let me put it in a very simple word. Virtualization is a technology, whereas cloud is a remote location set up by another company, and they use which utilizes virtualization technology. So there is a location somewhere at some place, they are providing you the cloud technology. And under the cloud technology, there is a virtualization technology that is running. So let me put it in a graphical way. So in virtualization, you have your data center. In your data center, you have physical servers, you have virtualization software running, and then you have operating system and applications running. And your IT team or your application team, they are the one who are actually managing data centers. They are managing the hardware. If something goes wrong with the physical server or a crash, you are responsible for it. If something goes wrong with your operating system, then then you have to fix it. You have to install the operating system. You have to manage everything in terms of the operating system, and you have to provide the ongoing support as well. You have to manage the applications as well. Now let's look at the cloud technology. In cloud technology, you have a cloud. That's what they call it, cloud, that where you cannot see where it is. And and the companies like Amazon and Google, they have their own data centers. Nobody knows where, but just let's say it's somewhere um, in some location, remote location. In that data center, they have like physical servers, they have virtualization running on it, operating system. Now, what happens here is their IT crew, they're the one who manage the data center. They are the one who manage the hardware, and they are the one who also manage the operating system if you want them to manage the infrastructure as well. They will provide you the ongoing support if anything goes wrong with any of these components within that cloud. The only thing they're not going to manage is your application. They will install the application most likely and run it, but you are the end user who will run that application. Now see the difference, how easy it becomes. On the left hand side, you are responsible for everything, for physical virtualization, operating system, apps. But in the cloud, it becomes so easier. That's why the cloud is becoming so famous nowadays, that everything, all your worries are gone. There are other people who are managing your physical server, you only paying to run your applications. And regardless, and you don't really care what is running under the hood, whether they're running HP server, whether they're running Dell, Cisco, you don't really care. You only care about your uptime for your application. Anyway, that's the difference between virtualization and cloud. I hope you understand. I'll see you in the next lecture. All right, let's look at some of the virtualization companies that are out there that provide the virtualization platform. The very first one is the VMware, and that's the main topic of this entire course. And their hypervisor is called the vSphere ESXi. They have a cloud technology as well, and that is called the vCloud. VMware also provides a VMware player, which could be used for home non-commercial use, and you don't have to pay for it. It's completely free. But of course, if you are using for commercial purpose, and also if you want to use some of the advanced feature of VMware Player, then you will have to pay for the licensing to run the player. Next one is Oracle. The company is Oracle. Their hypervisor, the older version is OVM, and the newer version they call it OLVM. They have a cloud technology as well. It's called Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Then they just like VMware, they have VMware Player. Oracle has something called Oracle VirtualBox. I'm sure you have actually played with the VirtualBox or VMware Player at some point. It's a lot easier to work with. You could just simply install on your existing operating system and then create additional virtual machines. Coming down to the next company, Microsoft, they have a virtualization technology as well, and their hypervisor is called Hyper-V, and their cloud technology is Azure. Then the fourth company in the list is Citrix. Their server hypervisor is Zen Server, and cloud technology is Citrix Cloud Services. By the way, the Oracle virtualization, they're using a lot of the backend code that is coming from the Zen server, the Citrix servers. All right, moving on. Red Hat, yes, they are one of the biggest company that actually deal with the Linux. Red Hat, they have their own virtualization technology as well, and it's called KVM. They have a cloud technology, Red Hat Cloud Suite. Then Amazon have a bunch of Linux or virtualization technology as well. I'm not really sure what that technology they use. They have their own homegrown technology, but they use all of that on AWS, which is their Amazon Web Services, which is a bigger cloud that provides computing platform or storage platform to people who do not want to host their data center and pay for it. So they use AWS. Then Google have same thing as Amazon. Their cloud technology is called Google Cloud Platform. So as you could see, I put it VMware on top. The reason one is because this is our primary topic for this course, and number two, VMware has almost like 80%, I would say approximately 80% of market share for virtualization in the world. So they are the pioneer who came up with the technology as well, and they have the highest share, and their products are a very I would say reliable, and they just not deal with vSphere. They have many other products which we will cover later on. I'll see you in the next lecture. VMware Incorporation is an American publicly traded software company from California, USA. It provides cloud computing and virtualization software and services. So, in this course, we are covering the virtualization software, this one. It also had cloud computing, which is another topic of its own. And they also provide services, meaning once you run their software in your company, you could buy their services as well as the professional services from them. The VMware was one of the first commercially successful companies to virtualize the x86 architecture in 1998. Yes, they are one of the first pioneer who actually virtualized the x86 architecture. Now, let's talk about the market share. VMware has approximately 80% of the virtualization market share. It means that there are so many other companies that actually provide you the virtualization software. There's a Microsoft, there is Red Hat, there's Oracle, but most of the market share has been captured by VMware. So it's a great news for those people who actually wants to switch their career to VMware. Then let's go to its name, VMware. It has weight of its own. So the VMware, the best thing I like about it is name especially. And they have actually what they did is they combined the hardware and software, both terms, and they came up with VMware. Hardware is something that you could touch, software is something that runs on top of the hardware that you cannot touch, and the VMware is combined of both. So what they did is they gave it a name, a virtual machine ware. There are two main virtualization software. By the way, VMware has a lot of different products, but we are covering the main virtualization software. One is called VMware Workstation Player. And by the way, that is something we will cover later on. You will learn about VMware Workstation Player as well. It's a software that runs over an operating system. What that really means, you have a physical machine, a laptop or desktop, for example, and you run your Windows operating system on it, or Mac or Linux, whatever the operating system you run on. Then you could actually install the VMware Workstation Player on top of your existing operating system and create additional virtual machines. These VMware Workstation Player are mostly used in a kind of lab environment, or if you are in an educational environment and you want to teach, or if you are setting up a lab in your home environment, VMware Workstation Player is the way to go. Then comes in the next software, which is the corporate level software. It's called VMware Hypervisor. VMware has a hypervisor and they call it ESXi, which we will cover later on once again. It's a bare metal hypervisor that runs over a hardware without having any operating system on it. So it means you get a new physical server from HP, Dell, UCS, Cisco, wherever you get it from. It does not have any operating system. So this hypervisor acts as its own operating system. You install it, the physical bare metal server, and then you run the virtual machine on it. You don't need any existing operating system for it. So keep these two virtualization software in your mind and we will cover them later on. Hello again, and let's talk about the importance of VMware. I know we have gone over the benefits of virtualization, exactly why it is important to have in your infrastructure. But in this video, I wanted to cover why VMware or any virtualization or learning virtualization is so important for anyone who is looking for a job in IT, or someone who is already in IT. Well, first of all, the system administrator or administration jobs that deal with operating systems like Linux, Windows, Solaris, AIX, Mac OS, or any kind of operating system. As you know, most of these operating systems are now built on virtualization platforms. So you do need virtualization, or as I said, the VMware has the biggest market share. So I'm gonna go with VMware. So you do need a VMware experience to manage your operating system virtual machines. If you are a network storage administrator, and you doing the administration of switches, routers, firewalls, fiber switches, storage arrays, disks, and stuff like that, where you are presenting disks to VMware environment, you need to know how you could present it, how you could scan it, how you could discover those storages, and how you could do virtual or distributed switching. You need VMware knowledge. Then going down to programming. If you are a programmer or developer and you deal with automation or some kind of testing where you need to automate things and you need to make sure whatever that you are developing works, the best platform to use is the virtual environment. Also, nowadays, a lot of people are spending their time into the automation of deploying virtual machines. As you know, you could go into the virtual machine, you could click and create a virtual machine. But now they have made it so fast that within a few clicks, you will have a completely built virtual machine with application installed on it. So programmers and developers deal heavily with VMware as well. Then comes the database or application administrators. Now, database or apps, they run on operating systems. And where do the operating system run? They run on virtual machines, most of them. So those virtual machines are on the VMs. And if you do not have a knowledge of VMware, people gonna ask you, even if you're applying for database or application administration job, they will ask you about your VMware experience. Let's talk about the cloud. As you know, approximately 90% of the cloud infrastructure run on virtual environment. And what you need VMware experience for it. And let's look at any IT job that you could think of: QA, IT technician, systems or network architects, data science, or security related. They all have to deal with VMware at any one point throughout their career. They will deal it, I promise you, and they expect the employers or the hiring manager expects you to know VMware. They don't want you to do the administration of VMware, but you do need to know how the virtual machine is created or managed. And if something goes wrong with the virtual machine, if it's not performing, you need to know what's behind that VMware. So anyway, this video was about the importance of VMware. I really hope you understand and you go through this entire course and learn a lot of things about VMware. I'll see you in the next lecture. Maybe it's the time, depends when you are going through my lectures. It may be the latest version is 19 or 20, but it does not matter whichever version you install as long as it is compatible with your operating system. The link is right there. I have also added the link into this video description as well. Now, for those of you who are running older version of CPU and trying to install the latest version of VMware Workstation Player, you might get a message like this. Unsupported CPU detected. If you do, then it means you cannot run the latest version of the player. You have to downgrade. I would recommend that you go with version 12, which is most of the time would work for the older versions of the CPU. All right, now let's go ahead and download it. So I will go into my Firefox browser and I will go to the Google page. In the Google page, I will type download VMware Player. Click on the very first link or second link, wherever it takes you for the VMware page. Here, right here, it says VMware Workstation Player 15.5. When you click on the download, right here, just see this download is for Windows. If you are a Mac user or Linux user, you could go with the other download. So click on the download now, and you'll see it downloads 16. It says 16 is a newer version that has been uploaded by the VMware. You will click on the save file and it will save it. I have already saved the file previously, so I will go into the file, and right here it's the file executable file. I'll go ahead and double click to start the installation now. Downloaded completed, installation starts, and it says Workstation Player 16. I'll go ahead and close this, minimize it. Okay, welcome to the VMware Workstation 16 Player Setup Wizard. All you have to do is simple. I'm sure everyone knows. Click Next. Accept the license and terms. Enhanced keyboard driver. A reboot is required. I like to keep it unchecked because I don't want to reboot my system. But if you want to have enhanced driver, go ahead and click on it. Add VMware Workstation console tool into system path. That's perfectly fine. If you wanted to change the location of the install, then you could change it right here. But I would recommend that you leave it default. Click Next. Check for product updates on startup. I don't like that. Join VMware Customer Experience Improvement Program. I don't want that because we all doing is the lab or some training. So click Next. Create desktop shortcuts or start menu. That's fine. Click Next. Leave it default. And go ahead and click on Install. Now the installation of the VMware Workstation Player can take anywhere between, I would say, 15-30 seconds to anywhere maybe like 2 minutes. It all depends on your system requirement or how beefy your system is. I am going to go ahead and nope, it's done. What I was gonna do is I was gonna fast forward, but itself the installation is pretty much very fast. So go ahead and click Finish, and there you go. You have the whole VMware Workstation installed. You will see right here, this is the icon that gets installed. It says VMware Workstation Player. So you could go ahead and double click on it to start it up. And once you start it up, it tells you use VMware Workstation 16 Player for free non-commercial use, or enter a license to allow commercial use. So of course you are using it for non-commercial use, so you could pick the first one and click continue, and then click finish. As soon as you click finish, let me just minimize the background. and go back to the player. Oops. Okay. So right here, as you can see, it tells you non-commercial use only. And right here, this is the player, and these are the options. And if you wanted to create a new virtual machine, you could come here and click on New Virtual Machine. And by the way, that is something we will cover in the next lecture. I'll see you in the next lecture. Hey everyone, it's time to do the big thing, and that is to download and install the vSphere ESXi server, which is the hypervisor virtualization layer that you need to have in order to do the virtualization in VMware. So let's put it in a graphical way so it will be easier to understand. The very first thing, of course, everybody has a laptop and desktop. We already done downloading and installing VMware Player. You have it. Now, once you have it, you start opening it up, and then we will create a virtual machine. On that virtual machine, we will install the ESXi server. And then we will use that ESXi server to create our multiple virtual machines to run like Red Hat Linux or Windows or whichever the operating system you wanted to run. Now, again, you probably thinking or asking, hey, why can't we run the Red Hat and Windows on top of VMware Player? Well, you could do that, but the whole point of this entire course is to teach you how the VMware environment works. And I, in corporate environment, all the VMware environment runs on ESXi server. So that's why we need the ESXi server platform. And you could actually get rid of the VMware player, the middle layer that you see. But then what do you have to do? You have to get rid of your Windows or Mac or whatever the operating system you're running on your computer, and then you would have to install the ESXi directly on top of that. So, of course, you don't want to do that, but that because then you will need more computers. So we are using the VMware player so we could set up our lab. All right, enough talking. Let's go and download the ESXi server first. So I have my Firefox right here. I will go ahead and click. First of all, go to .vmware.com and then make sure you create your account. I have already created my account. And once you create your account, it's probably going to ask you for your username. It's going to ask you your organization name. Just put home, just put lab environment. You don't have to provide your work email. It will ask you for your work email, and I'm sure you don't have it. So just put in your regular email. That is perfectly fine. Go to downloads, and right here you see it says vSphere. Click on the vSphere, and by default, it'll give you the most latest version, which is 7.0. We are going with the 6.5. Well, of course, you could go with 7.0, but 7.0 has just been released and it's running on the beta version. You see B right here? We don't really want to go through the most recent one. We wanted to go with the current industry is using. And I tell you, most of the companies using 6.0 or 6.5. So anyway, we'll go with 6.5. You could go with 6.7. It will have a very slight variation. You're probably not going to even notice, but that's fine. Stick around. Let's go with 6.5. Once you on this page, you will see the essential one, VMware Hypervisor, vSphere Hypervisor ESXi 6.5, Update 3. Click on Go to Downloads. And then VMware vSphere Hypervisor ESXi ISO image includes VMware tools. You need to download this one. Click on this download page. It will bring you to welcome my VMware. It will ask you for your email, which, as I said before, you have to create an account in VMware, and then you have to provide the credentials. Oops, I think I provided the wrong password. Okay, so the password is there. End user license agreement. You just click on this to agree. And for those who wants to go through the license agreement, please be my guest and read through it. Click on accept. And then once you accept it, you will get this file installer save as. Go ahead and click on OK. Now I'm not going to do the OK because I have already downloaded this file previously to save some time. So I'm going to go ahead and click cancel. By the way, I also wanted to let you know that this is in order for you to run this ESXi in your lab environment, you could run it without any cost for a few months, but then you will have to pay for it. But I'm sure, as we all know, that we are doing this for a lab purpose, so this is going to have a free trial to it. So you don't have to worry about paying it once the free trial period is over. I'm sure by then you probably have completed your course and the training. All right, so anyway, we'll go back. We have downloaded that image right here in my ISO file. Your location might be different, depends where your browser download option takes you. I have it right here. It says VMware vSphere ESXi 6.5. Okay, now what I have to do is open up my VMware workstation. Okay, from here, I'm going to click on create a new virtual machine. When you create the new virtual machine for the first time, it will take you to a default setting, which is installer disk. This is the one if you have the actual disk for the ESXi or any operating system. We don't have it, we have the ISO image, so we will go with installer disk image. Now, where is that file? The file or the ISO image is in my ISO folder, and the file is right here, VMware vSphere 6.5. Select that one. It will detect VMware ESXi 6.x detected. Perfect. Click next. All right, the virtual machine. What is the name that you want to give your virtual machine? I want to give it ESXi 1. This is the location where it will install all its files. Click next. Now, what is the disk that you want to give it to your ESXi server? Again, it depends on how much disk do you have on your computer. I have quite a few space, so I will go into this PC, and you'll notice I have a total disk space 475 and free is 394. So I have a lot of them, so make sure you have it too and assign it accordingly. My recommendation is assign at least 50 to 80. Now, click on Store Virtual Disk as single file. This is a lot easier to manage, so click Next. Then go through the virtual machine will be created the following settings or specification. Go through them, make sure all the information is correct. Hard disk is 80. Memory by default is taking 4 gig from your computer. Again, I said previously, make sure your computer has enough memory. How do you know if you have it? If you're using Windows, then it's just simply go to the search and type system information. Click on it, and you're going to see right here it says install physical memory RAM. I have 32 gig. You should have at least I would say 8. Network adapter NAT and other devices is taking 2 CPU from your computer. Power on this virtual machine after creation. That's fine. Click next. Oh, sorry, finish. Once it finished, it created the virtual machine and it is powering it on. And as soon as it's powering it on, it is automatically loading the ESXi installer. And of course, the reason it is loading the ESXi installer is because we have attached the ISO image of the ESXi. You could also check right here by going to Player, click on Manage, and click on Virtual Machine Settings. Right here in the virtual machine setting, you could check the hardware, and right here where it says CD/DVD, you'll see use ISO image file and the file that we have attached to it. That's how it is picking it up. So go ahead and cancel it. So right now on this screen, as you see, at every time you install any kind of operating system, you'll see that it uploads all the packages, the files that it needs into the memory so it could install those packages. I am going to fast forward. Okay, I'm back. Now it's telling me welcome to the VMware ESXi 6.5 installation. Now all you have to do is click inside and just hit enter. So it could continue the installation. Select the operation to perform and just hit enter. Again, this is the user agreement. If you accept, go ahead and press the F11 to accept and continue. Now it's going to scan the devices where it needs to install this ESXi server. Okay, it found the device which is the storage or disk. And you could see while we created the VM, we picked 80 gig of disk. And that's what exactly it is showing. And it's asking, do you want me to install this ESXi server on this 80 gig? Yes. So what we'll do, we'll just hit enter. Now please select a keyboard layout. I'm in US. Depending on your location where you are, you could pick the one. For me, I'll just hit enter. Now it's asking for root password. Yes, this operating system, ESXi server, actually has some Linux behind it. That's where it is built on. Some people say it is built on Linux. Some people says it has some source of Linux. But anyway, let's not get into it. It does have a root account. You have to provide the root password. So just create a root password, whichever works for you, that you remember, of course, and then hit enter. Okay, scanning system, gathering additional system information. The installer is configured to install ESXi 6.5 on this target. Again, this target is that same 80 gig of disk that we have. Set it up for it. The disk will be repartitioned. That is perfectly fine. All you have to do is confirm by pressing F11. Now it's going through installing ESXi 6.5. It could take anywhere from like a couple of minutes to 5 minutes depending on your system. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward. Okay, so the installation has completed. ESXi 6.5 has been installed successfully. And it is right now, it says remove the installation media before rebooting. So reboot the server to start using ESXi 6.5. So all you have to do is just hit enter at this point. If you're installing your ESXi on a physical machine and your physical machine is set to boot on CD-ROM, then most likely it will boot again on the ESXi server installer to install it again. That is why it is telling you that you should remove that installation media before rebooting. So for those of you who actually using this ESXi server installation as we are doing right now in the lab, then you don't have to worry about it. All you have to do is simply click inside and hit enter, and it will reboot. The server will shut down and reboot. The process will take a short time to complete. Now you could go ahead and see at the bottom says I finished installing. You could click on it. Now remember, if you want to get out of this window, because your mouse and your cursor is captured inside of this window, to get out of it, you have to press Alt and Control both at the same time to release your cursor. It is released. Now you could click on I finished installing. It's gone now. Now your system or ESXi server is rebooting, and it is loading anything just like an operating system would load its processes, its background processes, and everything. The loading of these processes on ESXi server can again take anywhere from a minute or two. And once it comes back, it will give you all the options that it has or needs to set, which we'll look at it in just a few seconds. Okay, folks, congratulations. You have successfully installed ESXi server. And as soon as it's rebooted, it comes back to this screen and it tells you the version of ESXi, the CPU information, the RAM information, and its IP address. We will go into customizing and configure its IP address in the later lecture. So I'll see you in the next lecture. Hey folks, in this lecture we are going to create our test VM, our very first VM on VMware Player. I have chosen CentOS as an operating system to install on top of the VM, and that is the CentOS version 7.5. You could install any operating system of your choice. My main reason of this lecture is to show you how you could create your VM and how you could go through the installation of the operating system. To put it in a graphical way, we have our laptop and desktop, and on top of that, as you know, we have just downloaded our VMware Player and installed it. Now I'll show you how you could create a virtual machine, and then with the virtual machine you can install an operating system. For those of you who have actually worked with VMware Player in the past, you know how to create a VM, how to work with a VM. You could simply go ahead and skip this lecture. But for those of you who are going through with me for the first time how VMware Player works, then stick around. So I will go into my VMware Player, double click on it. Okay, this is a VM I was playing around before, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it so you could ignore that. So if when you start your VMware Workstation Player for the first time, it will show up like this. Click on Create a New Virtual Machine. Usually it gets by default it's selected the first one. Since we have the ISO image, I should go ahead and click on installer disk image. But the newer version of VMware Workstation Player has this new feature where it detects the operating system and makes you go through the easy install and does everything for you. But again, my purpose of this lecture is to show you how we could go through step by step. So for that reason, I'm going to select the last option, which is I will install the operating system later. Click next. What kind of operating system are you installing? If you're installing Windows, Linux, or any other. So as I said before, I am going with Linux CentOS, and CentOS is 7. Click next. What is the name of virtual machine? This is the name of virtual machine. When created, will show up right here. So I'm going to select Linux VM. This is the location where it will be saved. What's the disk size? By default is 20. I'm going to leave it as is. Store virtual disk as a single file. I will select that. It's easier to manage. Click next and finish. Once it's finished, it is going to create your first virtual machine. Now, the virtual machine is created. It's empty. It has nothing inside. How? When you click on power on, you're going to see that it will start like this. It will have this pipe which will spin around and would do nothing. And it would tell you there is no operating system found. Now think of a way back in the days when the computers were delivered, it didn't have the Windows or Linux installed on it. You would go in and install it for yourself. So just think of it that this computer was on assembly line. You put in all the parts together, and now you have that parts right here. The machine you built is right here. Now you need to put in the operating system, and that's what exactly it's telling you. Operating system not found. So how can we find it? Well, we have to attach the operating system ISO. For that, click on the drop down menu of the player, go to Manage, go click on Virtual Machine Setting, and then select CD DVD, and then choose the option Use ISO Image, and click on Browse, and go to the location where you have your ISO image saved. I have the ISO image saved on my desktop ISO folder, and here is the CentOS 7. Click OK or Open. Now, for those of you who do not have the ISO image for CentOS, you could simply go online, and right here is the location. How I got this location? I just simply typed CentOS on Google and went to the second link which says Mirrors. Clicked on it, and it brought me to this page, and I clicked on the third link, which is the 4.2 gig file, and it downloaded it. That's how I have it saved. Now I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now it is saved, and it is attached to this machine. It's just like as if you pulling a tray out of a physical machine and putting an actual CD-ROM inside. But nowadays, since a lot of things have been virtualized, the disk itself has been virtualized as well. And when it is virtualized, it is named as an ISO image. So I have attached the ISO image. Now what? Now I'm going to go ahead and click inside of this window, and then simply hit enter. As soon as I hit enter, it detected that ISO image, and it found, hey, this is a CentOS. What do you want to do? I will go ahead and install. Right here it says install CentOS. I will click, I'll hit enter, and it will go through the installation of the entire Linux operating system. Now, of course, my whole purpose here is to show you how you could create a virtual machine, attach an ISO image, and how do you go through installing the operating system. I am not teaching you how or which operating system you're installing. So that is why I'm going to stop right there. You could go through the whole installation if you want. If you don't want, that's where the whole lecture ends basically. See, it started. Welcome to CentOS 7. You could go ahead and click continue, or whatever that you wanted to do with it, you could do it. But again, I'm going to go ahead and cancel it. Power off. And I'm going to go back to the workstation player. And I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to right click and say delete from disk. Why am I deleting? Because we don't really need a Linux machine for this course. I just showed you how you could create a virtual machine. Then what is the next step? The next step is that we are going to run an ESXi server on top of the virtual VMware workstation. How that works? A lot more fun. I will see you in the next lecture. Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to connect to our ESXi server, which we have downloaded and installed and configured already. And we'll explore the features that are available within the vSphere client, and we'll go through its dashboard. So we'll go through again our beautiful picture to make it understand a lot better. We have our laptop or desktop. We did our VMware player. We installed our ESXi server. We configured that ESXi server and accessed it through its console. And we've been through the console, the system configuration and customization. Now it's time to access that same ESXi server through vSphere web client, and that's the client you need to use to connect to ESXi server in order to create virtual machines and do a lot more the functionality that ESXi server has to offer. Now, to access the ESXi server, right now the 6.5, which we have installed, all you need is a web browser, and we'll put in the IP address to connect to it. The older versions of ESXi server, as I have mentioned previously as well, they needed a thick client, which is a downloadable client on your Windows or Mac PC, and then you double click the icon and it will open up a prompt where you provide the IP and username and password. But Now, the newer version of ESXi, you don't need that thick client to be installed. All you need is a web browser, regardless of which computer you're using, and you could access that vSphere web client or dashboard. All right, without further ado, let's get into our Firefox. The Firefox is the web browser that I'm using. You could use any web browser of your choice. So I'll go into our Firefox browser and I'm going to type in the IP address of our ESXi server. And I'm sure if you remember the IP address of ESXi server from our last lecture, it was 192.168.19.5. If you do not remember, you could quickly go into the ESXi server console, and you're going to see right here, it tells you in the second options, download tools to manage this host. And the IP address is 192.168.19.5. Perfect. Let's go back and just type it in 192.168.19.5. As soon as you hit enter, it actually redirects you to the secure page of the vSphere, of the vSphere. And every time you access the secure website, which is HTTPS, it always gives you a warning, potential security risk ahead. Now, if you have the right IP address, you could just simply go ahead and click on Advanced, come down, scroll down, and just click on Accept the Risk and Continue. As soon as it continues, you're going to see the IP address with /UI and /login. So now go ahead and put in your login, which is root. It's just the same username and password that you created during the installation of the ESXi. I'm going to put in my password. Okay, bingo. Now you see I am connected to that ESXi server through a web client. Again, this whole thing is called vSphere web client. The very first thing that you're going to see by default, it's going to connect to, and it's going to show the host. The host is the ESXi server. Remember that. The host is the actual hypervisor, the ESXi server. And right here, you're going to notice you are currently using ESXi in evaluation mode. This license will expire in 60 days. Okay, so now we know for sure that VMware gives you ESXi server software and to play with for 60 days. And I think it's enough time for us to learn this entire course. There are many features that you could use within this evaluation period, but once that license expires, then those features will stop working. So we'll go over those features. I'm sure everybody stay on course with me and we'll finish the course way before than 60 days. All right. As you notice, the version comes up as 6.5, which we did install with update 3 and build version. The state is normal and uptime is 0.8 days, which is, if you convert that into hours, you'll get that exact number of hours, how long it's been up for. On the right hand side, you're going to see it tells you the CPU it is using right now and how much free it has. The memory it is using right now, which is 4.2, and how much it has left. It has 2.58 gig. So it shows that you could actually create a virtual machine of 1 gig. How many? Well, at least you could create 2 of them, right? If you assign 1 gig per VM. The storage we have right here is 72.5 gig. So we assign 80 gig, if you remember. Out of 80 gig, the ESXi server itself is using up 7.5 gig, which is perfectly fine, and we have enough space to assign some of the storage capacity to the virtual machine we will be building. On top of that menu, you're going to see Get vCenter Server. We will get the vCenter Server when we going to install and create a second ESXi server. Because if you have one ESXi server, you don't really need a vCenter to manage it. When you have 2 ESXi server, then you could manage it one at a time. But if you want to combine those 2 servers, you need a vCenter server. And we will get there later. Then we have the option of create and register virtual machine. If you want to create virtual machines, how many? This is the very first option you have to go through. And I told you before, you are not going to get this option if you are going to ESXi server through the console. And there is the console. Here, you're not going to see that option. All these options are only available through the vSphere client. Shutdown, if you want to shut down your host, reboot, refresh, some of the actions are right here, which we'll cover in a second. Then we're going to come down to the hardware. This is if you want to expand, it will give you more information. The manufacturer is VMware, model, CPU, memory, persistent memory, and all the information about your networking, the DNS, the storage adapter, and the disk, how much disk you have. A lot of times you're going to find a lot of information repeatedly available by different menu options. That is fine. I like it because VMware has given us all the different options we could pull that information from. So you don't have to remember one way or the other to get that information. You're going to find it from different ways. On the right hand side, we have a configuration, image profile, vSphere HA state not configured. HA is high availability, which we'll cover later on. You need at least 2 ESXi server to set up a high availability. In case one server dies, you have a second server which takes over the virtual machines of the first server, again based on the resources. vMotion is supported when the license expires in 60 days. I am sure this vMotion feature will not be available. vMotion is a feature of ESXi or vCenter which allows you to migrate virtual machines from one ESXi server to another. And they use a technology called vMotion. The vMotion will work automatically if you have vSphere enabled. A lot of things to cover about it. I don't want you to get too much information right now, but right now we just go and skim over the vSphere dashboard. System information, you could go through it by yourself. There are some version information and uptime, date, and stuff like that. Performance, summary, last hour. If you want to see how your ESXi server is doing in terms of CPU, memory, how much it is using. Okay, the top, very top, you're going to see right here root at the IP address. So you know you are logged in as root, and this is the IP address of your ESXi server. If you click on the scroll down here arrow, you're going to see auto refresh. If you want this page to refresh every 15 seconds or 30 seconds, 60, you could set it up. Right now it is just set to off. Next is password change. This is the password change. If you wanted to change the password that you created during the installation, you could actually come down here and change the password. Going back, there are more settings. Send a usage statistics to VMware, which we remember didn't select it during installation. So if you want to do it now, you could do it. Enable visual effects, which you see it already with the visual effects. The performance, show only recent objects, show welcome message, which we already have. If you don't want to see any welcome message, you could change it here. Language, if you want to change the language. Console, when you create a virtual machine, how do you want to view that virtual machine console? Do you want to have a keyboard layout setup or default console? Application timeout. This is the application timeout settings that we have in case things go wrong. It will only time out for 15 minutes. Reset to defaults. All the changes that you made here can be reset to the factory defaults by just clicking this option. All right, so now we are going to get into the second menu, which we actually did. There are action, and I think we didn't go over the actions, so we'll quickly go over the actions as well. Create and register, same menu that you get right here. Shutdown, reboot, same thing. Services, enable secure shell and enable console shell. So if you enable this services enable secure shell, it means that you could SSH into that ESXi server. So let's click on it. It says SSH is enabled on this host. You should disable SSH unless it's necessary for administrative purposes. Yes, so if you have a PuTTY downloaded, you could access it through PuTTY. I don't know if I have downloaded. I don't. So we'll go ahead and download PuTTY real quickly. Download PuTTY. And I have 64-bit for my Windows machine. It is installed. Let's open it up. Okay. Next. Next. Install PuTTY. Install directory path command prompt. I don't need that. I don't need that. And install. Yes. All right. Done. Finish. Now I have the PuTTY installed. Now if I go back into my search, and if you see right here, PuTTY allows you to connect to a server that has Linux or any SSH service running. If you are connecting to the ESXi server from Windows machine, then you need this PuTTY. But if you are connecting to ESXi server and you're using Mac, you don't need a PuTTY. All you need to start up your terminal terminal in Mac, and then type in the IP of the ESXi server. You could type in this way, which is SSH -L for the user root 192.168.19.5 on your Mac terminal, and it will connect to the ESXi server. For Windows, we have to have this PuTTY. So we're going to put in 192.168.19.5, and I'll click open. The server host key is not cached in registry. Just click yes, and you'll see it is connected to this ESXi server now. You could just put in the root and password, and you'll see it is connected to this ESXi server right here. This is the one. There are 3 different methods you could connect. One is to the console, which we have done. One through the vSphere web client, which have different functionality. And the third is through the PuTTY, which again has different functionality as well. If you want to perform functionality of vSphere through command line, you could do that here if you know what are the commands. Anyway, let's minimize this. And that was the action purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and disable that secure shell. The second service you notice is enable console shell. So if you wanted to get the console from here, instead of going through this, then you could enable that as well. Other actions, enter maintenance mode. A lot of times companies that actually doing maintenance on the ESXi server, meaning upgrading or any kind, they put it in a maintenance mode. Once you put it in a maintenance mode, all the virtual machines running on that host will be migrated to a different host using HA and vMotion functionality. Lock mode, if you wanted to lock that server so nobody could put in or change anything, you could do it here. Generate support bundle, so if something goes wrong with the host, you could actually generate some logs and you could provide that to VMware to review it. All right, that's what all the actions are about. Let's go into the manage. When you go into the manage, you're going to find out system information. There's a hardware tab, exactly what's inside of this server. Licensing, as I said, the license is only for 60 days. After that, you're not going to have these features that are listed. What are the packages installed inside of these hosts? You could view them all one by one if you want to. What are the services running on this ESXi server? Security and users. If you want to create additional users who could access this ESXi server, you could do that. A lot of time, the corporate companies, they actually have their single sign-on and they configure it to have users log in through the Active Directory. You could do it right here. Moving on to the monitor, if you have issues going on with your host, you could come in and look at over here, change the graph change the way you want to have it monitored, performance through CPU, memory, network, disk. It will tell you where the contention is. You can also check the hardware, same way events. What are the events that have happened? What are the things that have done or people have done with this ESXi server? CV connected to the through the ESXi server through SSH. It is there. Anything you have done to this host will be recorded here. So keep in mind, don't do anything that is not within your policies. Tasks, what are the tasks we are going to do? If you're installing anything, stopping any services, it will be logged here. Other log information, you could find it here as well. Notifications. You could go through these menus one by yourself, coming down to virtual machine. Do we have any virtual machines? No. By the way, virtual machine, we will create virtual machines in other lectures. Next one is storage. How much storage we have? We have 80 gig and 72.5 is available. If you have additional storage, if you have shared storage, it will show up right here. If you wanted to attach new disks, you could click on Data Store Browser or create a new data store, and it will ask you what kind of data store it has. Most of the time in the lab that I've seen people mount the NFS data store, which we will brush on later on. Last one is networking. We have two network switches. These are virtual switches. One is a management network, which is the management network where we have assigned our IP of 192.168.19.5. This is that management network. You see right here? That's the IP assigned to that. You could change that, edit that setting here as well. See right here, management network. If you wanted to change the security, if you wanted to put a NIC teaming to it, all that network can be done here. Going back to networking, the second network that you see is called VM network. When I'm going to create a virtual machine, you're going to see it will have this network for it, not this. So that's how our companies or organizations separate their network. That's pretty much about a quick overview of a vSphere web client. If you have any questions, let me know, but I'm sure at this point you have a very good understanding how you could access your ESXi server through vSphere web client. I'll see you in the next lecture. Desktop, we have our VMware player and we have our ESXi server. And in the last video, we created our virtual machine. That virtual machine is just like a container. It has no operating system. It has the information that what operating system will be on that container, but still we have to install an operating system. And in this video, we're going to go ahead and install Linux operating system. And I have picked CentOS 7, and we'll go through that installation really quickly. All right, let me get right into our ESXi server. Okay, in this ESXi server, I put in the IP address. It's there. I'm going to put in the credentials. Now, this is a Linux machine that we created on top of that ESXi server. When you click on it, you could get some information right off here on the general information, which is all the information that you have selected when you were creating that virtual machine. Now go ahead and click on this. This will power on the virtual machine, or you could select power on right here. So whichever the option that you want to pick, you could also do the same thing by going to the action and power on from here. There are multiple different ways that you could power it on. You could also click on this and right click and power on as well. Let's go ahead and click on power on. Okay, when it's powering on, you want to see the console, correct? So that's why you have to click on console. So when you click on console, you have different options available. Open in browser, which will open right here. Let's close this. Click on console again, open console in new window, which is going to open a big window. Next one, open console in new tab, which is going to open in a new tab. And then launch remote console. If you want to launch this is a thick client you got to have. And for that thick client, you got to download the VMRC. So anyway, let's open right here. I have already downloaded. Okay, let me first click inside because I don't want the operating system to go through the test and this media. So I'm gonna move up the arrow. There you go. So see install CentOS. If you notice at the bottom, it was on a counter of 60 seconds. Anyway, so I'm gonna hit Alt Control and get out of this and release my cursor. If you're picking CentOS, and for those of you who know how the installation works, you're gonna see two options: install CentOS 7, and the second option is test this media and install OS 7, which will go through the media and check to make sure there are no corruption on the ISO image. And the last one is the troubleshooting. So since we're installing, we'll pick the first one, go ahead and click inside and hit enter. Okay, so press the enter key to begin the installation. So I'm going to hit enter to install the installation. Okay, now it's going to upload the packages to its memory so it could start the installation. Let's give it a few seconds. All right, welcome to CentOS. Select the language. We all know that. What do we have to do? Just click continue. Installation source is the source that where the ISO image is. The date, if you are in New York, you could pick the New York. I am in New York, so it's by default is picking New York Americas for me. You could pick the regions depending on your region. Keyboard, US English. Language support, United States. Installation source, local media. Software selection, I have just picked a minimal install, that it's not going to give me a GUI of the Linux. If you want to work with the GUI, if you like the GUI, you could go ahead and select server with GUI. But for this this video, this practice, this lab session, just pick the minimal install, be done with it, come down, installation destination. We have carved out 20 gigs, so just click done, and kdump is enabled. Leave it default. Network and host name. Just turn on the network. And if you notice right here, the host name is localhost.local domain. I want you to change it to CentOS Linux 1. This will be the host name of the operating system. Go ahead and click apply. As soon as you click apply, you're going to see current host name CentOS Linux 1. It's there. So go ahead, click done, and begin installation. Pick your root password. And by the way, for those of you, sorry, it didn't match. But those of you who know how to go through the CentOS and Linux installation or any installation, then you don't really have to watch that. You could skip it and come to the part where I'm done doing the installation. So right now it's going to install 311 packages. Total so far is 140. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward, and once it's done, I'll come back. Okay, so our installation has been completed. I'm going to reboot. Okay, beautiful. I got the console. I'm going to go ahead and log in. Okay, so we have completed our virtual machine creation and installation of operating system. I'll see you in the next lecture. Hello and welcome back. In this video, we are going to cover the installation of VMware tools on a virtual machine. Well, VMware tools are part of an ESXi server that should be installed on a virtual machine to pull the accurate information about that virtual machine, like what kind of operating system it's running, what other patches it has, or if it has the right drivers to talk to from ESXi to the virtual machine. So you have a virtual machine which is Windows, and from the ESXi server, we're going to install the VMware tools. So ESXi server can pull the information back from the virtual machine. So let's look at our ESXi vSphere web client. And here is our Windows machine. So when you click on this Windows machine, you're going to see right here as an information that comes up. It says VMware Tools is not installed in this virtual machine. VMware Tools allows detailed guest information to be displayed, as well as allowing you to perform operation in the guest OS. For example, Grace, shutdown, reboot, etc. You should install VMware Tools. So of course it is highly recommended that you install so it could function properly or has a compatible drivers that could talk back to the ESXi server. So all you have to do is simply click on Action and then go down to Guest OS and then simply click on Install VMware Tools. Once you do that, you're going to see it says Mount in Tools Installer. It has mounted. Let's go to our Windows machine. So this is our Windows machine. So as soon as this operation starts, you're going to see right here it comes up as DVD drive VMware tools. Select to choose what happens to this disk. So click on it and just simply say run setup 64.exe. It says preparing VMware tools for installation, and now we will simply follow the wizard and just go ahead and click next, and if there are licenses, we'll click on it. So select the setup type, simply click typical unless there are certain programs or features that needs to be installed. Just simply go ahead and click next. Click install to begin the installation. See right here, you're noticing it is installing the drivers. These drivers allows your mouse, your keyboard, and all those peripheral devices you have attached to function properly, or a lot faster, of course. Okay, click Finish button to exit the setup wizard. The installation has been completed. Once it is completed, it will ask you must restart your system for the configuration changes made to the VMware tools to take effect. Click Yes to restart now, or No if you plan to manually restart later. Now, of course, if your machine is running any production workflows or applications, you don't want it to do it right now. You want to schedule it. You want to talk to the application owner before you reboot. So go ahead. For us, we'll go ahead and just click on Yes. And it is going to restart our virtual machine. And once it's back online, you will see it will function a lot better. You might not have to click on Alt and Control to get your mouse back. You should be able to get it out without pressing those keys. So it is very important again to install VMware tools. You could also install VMware tools on Linux as well. Most of the newer operating systems of Linux and Windows as well comes pre-installed with the VMware tools. So that's pretty much about it. This is what we had to cover in this lecture. I'll see you in the next lecture. Hello charming people. In this video we're going to create a new virtual machine and install Windows on it. So again we have our desktop, VMware player, vSphere ESXi. We have already installed a VM running Linux. Now this time we're going to install Windows. Alright, let's get right into it. Alright, Firefox up and running. We already have a Linux machine. Now we're going to create a new virtual machine. So click on virtual machines, click on create new virtual machines. Other options we have already talked about, and this time we're going to install Windows. If you have already done this and you have experience with installation, perfect. You could go and do it on your own, or if you want to follow me, that's fine too. So Windows, I'm going to install Windows Server 2016. And by the way, the ISO image of Windows 2016 has already been provided, or I have provided to you guys on the external link within this video. So go ahead and check it out. Go ahead and click next. The data store, we have a capacity of 80, and out of which we have 40 gig of free space left. Click next. By default is picking up a 4 gig of memory, so please remember the host, our ESXi server has 4 gig of memory. And if we assign the 4 gig of memory to this VM while knowing that we have already assigned 1 gig to Linux, so that's going to be 5 gig. So how can you run 5 gigs on a 4 gig host? Well, technically you could run it because it's going to share the resources, but it's going to cause a lot of problem. So make sure you always have less resources assigned to your virtual machine than your host. In this case, I'm going to change it to 2 gig. The hard disk is asking for 40 gig. I'm going to pick 30 gig. And this time, instead of me picking the data store ISO image, I'm going to pick the host device. When I pick the host device, then of course I have to attach the ISO to my host. And who is my host? My host is my ESXi server. So let me go to my ESXi server, which is right here. I'll go to the player, manage, virtual machine settings, click on CD DVD, click on use ISO image, click on browse, and I'll go to my ISO image folder. And right here I have a Windows Server 2016, which is an evaluation version by the way that you could download from Microsoft website. And again, as I said, you could find the link on the description of this video. Click OK or open and then OK. Now this ESXi server has attached to the ISO image of Windows. And I am going to read that ISO image through that ESXi server right here. That's why I picked the host device. Let's go ahead and click next. Just review it one more time and click finish. So click on start and click on this arrow start or power on, whichever option that you prefer or whichever way that you wanted to click on. Once you click on it, it will start the console and it will start loading the files. And this loading files is the Windows loading file. It knows that it has an image attached to it, and it will start the installation process. Okay, so the installation comes up. We'll go ahead and simple wizard, go ahead and install now and set up its starting. So let's give it a few seconds before it loads all the programs. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and Windows Server 2016 Data Center Evaluation. Click Next. Accept the terms. Next. Pick the second option, Custom Install Windows Only. And pick the drive that we have carved out for this VM, which is the 30 gig, and click Next. Now this is going to copy the Windows file and install on this 30 gig disk that we have carved out, and it'll go through the entire installation. I am going to fast forward this entire installation, and once it completes, then I'll come back. Installation has been completed. Let's go ahead and click on restart. Go ahead and create a password for administrative accounts. Okay, our machine is back online. Okay, so that completes our installation for Windows operating system on a virtual machine, and that completes our lecture. I'll see you in the next lecture. Okay, boys and girls, we have our hypervisor or virtualization layer ready. And now we're going to go ahead and create a virtual machines on it. So let's put it again in a graphical way. And here is your desktop or your laptop. We have installed VMware Player and we have installed or created the ESXi server layer on top of it. Now the next step in this video we're going to do is we're going to create a virtual machine on top of that ESXi server. All right, let's go right into it. So I have my web browser open here, which is Firefox. You could use any browser. This is the IP address of my ESXi server. If you do not remember it, you could go back to your ESXi server console and you're going to notice your IP address right here. All you have to do is simply type in the IP address and hit enter and it will give you this page. Let's go ahead and log in. Okay, it's gonna take a few seconds to log in to get you the page, the main and navigation page. Okay, so we have already covered how you could manage the host, what are the information available of your host. Okay, now let's go into the virtual machines. Click on that, and we are going to create our first virtual machine. Click on it. Okay, the very first thing is create a new virtual machine, which is what we're going to um, choose the option. It says you will be able to customize processor, memory, network connection, storage, and so on. Think of it right now that you're standing on an assembly line in any manufacturer, Dell or HP, whatever, and you are building your own laptop. When you're building your own laptop, what do you have to choose? You have to choose your CPU, you have to choose your memory, storage, all that stuff, right? That's what you look for when you go out and buy a laptop. Just like that, you are building your virtual machines, and you're going to be the guy who's going to be picking out these these hardwares for your server or your computer. The next option we have is deploy a virtual machine from an OVF or OVA file. OVF stands for Open Virtual Format, or OVA stands for Open Virtual Appliance. These are pre-packaged virtual machines that are given to you by different vendors. Or maybe VMware. VMware has an appliance for vCenter, which we'll cover later. They are already done for you, meaning the configuration done. Their operating system has already been installed. All you have to do is deploy that OVF or OVA virtual machine in your environment and you're ready to go. Then the next one is register an existing virtual machine. So if you already have a virtual machine that's not registered to your inventory, you could register it right now. But we're going to go with the first option because we are creating for the first time. Go ahead and click next. Name. Let's pick a name. I am going to install a Linux on this virtual machines later. So I'm going to pick a name Linux 1. Please remember this is not the name that will be given to the operating system as a host name. This is the name that will show up as your virtual machine under this virtual machine icon. All right, compatibilities, ESXi 6.5, you're running 6.5, so it's selected by default. Guest OS family, so it's a Linux. Yes, I'm going to install the Linux. Guest OS version, I have CentOS 7 that I'm going to install. Now you probably notice, hey, there is a CentOS 8 or Red Hat 8 that's already been released. Why I'm not seeing in the list? See right here, Red Hat 7, you don't see Red Hat 8. The reason you don't see it is because we are using one version behind of our ESXi, which is 6.5. See right here, if you go with the 6.7 or more, or even as I was saying, versions ESXi 7, then you will be able to see the newer versions of the operating system that are out there. That's why people releases newer versions so they keep up with the outside market or keep up with other vendors. Most of the market right now, most of the companies, they are on 6.0 or 6.5 on the VMware ESXi. That's why I picked this. And I want you to understand this better than before I jump into 6.7. 6.7 is pretty much similar. 7 might have a bit different, but stick with 6.5. All right, then we're going to select guest OS version, which I was just on, so I'm going to select CentOS 7. Click next. This is the data store. So remember we picked 80 gig when we were creating a virtual machine on our uh, VMware workstation player, and we assigned that 80 gig to our ESXi server. This is that exactly hard disk. Its capacity is 72.5 because the rest has been used by ESXi. If you had multiple disks attached to our ESXi server, you would see that multiple disks here. In corporate world, I would say 9 out of 10 you will see multiple disks, and those multiple disks are not the ones that are attached to are not the ones that within the ESXi server hardware. Those data stores are mostly attached to ESXi by an external storage like EMC or Hitachi. We'll cover that later. Let's go next. CPU have 1, memory is picking up 2 gig. If your ESXi server has 4 gig and you are picking 4 gig, what will happen? Of course, it's not going to work as efficiently as you think because your host has 4 gig and you're taking away 4 gig for your virtual machine. So make sure you're picking the memory that is less than what your host has. I'm going to go ahead with 1 gig. So I'm going to change to GB and I'm going to put it 1 gig. All right, hard disk. As you know, we have a hard disk of 80 gig. Out of 80 gig, we have left 72 gig. So we have enough. So I'm going to change that to 20 gig. SCSI controllers, leave that as is. These are the VMware SCSI controllers. And there are a few others, LSI Logic, LSI Logic Parallel, and VMware Para Virtual. I always tell my students to go with VMware Para Virtual. This is a default one, unless your operating system requirement is different. SATA controller, these are the controller by default. USB controller, USB version 2.0, leave it default. If you want to plug in your USB, now for those of you, if you are thinking, hey Imran, this is a virtual machine, how am I going to plug a physical USB to a virtual machine that doesn't exist? Very good question. Well, the way it works is you plug in that USB to your ESXi server, which is a physical, and you pull that data off your USB through your ESXi server. Next one is network adapter. So you notice you could also come down here and expand, and you're going to see other information about network if you wanted to change a different network adapter, if you want to keep it 1 gig, or VMX Net 3, which also allows you to, I think, have 10 gig. There is other VM network. If you had created different networks, let's say a lot of companies have 2 different network, one for their backups, one for virtual machine network. If you wanted to do that, you would have to create it before you create the virtual machine. Anyway, leave that default. Okay, so when you come down to CD DVD drive, you're going to see the host device. Host device is where you're going to map your ISO image where the CentOS is sitting on. So if you select the host device, it means this ESXi server, whatever attached to this ESXi server, that's what it's going to read it from. So let me go to my ESXi server and go to this player drop down, manage virtual machine settings, and you're going to see right here CD DVD, and you could click on browse and attach your ISO right here. Once you attach your ISO, then you could tell in this customized setting that I'm going to read my ISO image off of host device. That's one way if you select the host device. The second way is if you click on data store ISO file, it's going to ask you upload your ISO to the data store. Remember, this data store is the 80 gig that we carved out for our ESXi server. In most of the corporate world, people do upload all their ISOs to a data. So I'm going to go ahead and create a directory, and I'm going to call it ISOs. And click create directory, and you see right here it's created. And in this directory, I'm going to go ahead and upload my ISO image, which is my CentOS 7. Go ahead and click open. And you're going to see it is going through the upload process. Now, depending on your computer speed, it could take anywhere from a minute to 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward from this point on. Okay, so our ISO file has been uploaded. So now go ahead and click on it and make sure the size it matches the size that you have on of the actual ISO image. Go ahead and click select status connect at power on, and that means is whenever I power on my virtual machine, it will attach to ISO image right away. Okay, so CD, DVD media, it's already browsed to it. Let's minimize that. Video card, it has a default setting, all the other settings, default video card, controller, SATA controller. This is all going to be default, and it's going to come from the host depending on what kind of host you have. Let's go ahead and click next. And by the way, make sure you also have the network adapter connect right here, check mark. Data store ISO file, check marked. Click next. Please go through and review the settings that you're assigning to your virtual machine and click finish. Virtual machine Linux 1 was successfully created. Beautiful, and congratulations to you all. You have just created your very first virtual machine on VMware vSphere ESXi environment. Great. Now, next step, in the next lecture, we are going to go ahead and start up the virtual machine and install our operating system. I'll see you in the next lecture. Hello everyone, in this video we are going to update our ESXi hostname. We have a VMware player running on our laptop or desktop, and we have vSphere ESXi on it. We all know that. Right now its hostname is set to localhost.local domain, and I wanted to change it to ESXi1. Now you're probably thinking, why do I want to do it? The reason I wanted to do it, there are two reasons. One is in the corporate environment, you deal with multiple hypervisors, so you don't want to leave it with localhost local domain. You gotta have a proper policy standard host names assigned to each of the ESXi server. The second reason, in our lab, we are going to have a second ESXi server as well. So I don't want to have the same name as localhost for our second ESXi server, which will cause a lot of confusion, of course. So that's why this is the right time. Let's go ahead and change that right now. And in order to change that, you cannot go to our vSphere web client. So right here in the vSphere web client, you notice localhost.local domain. You cannot change it here. You have to go to the console. So the console is the one that is running on VMware workstation player. So right here, and click inside and hit F2. It will ask you for the root password. Then come down to where it says configure management network. Configure management network, as soon as you highlight it, you're going to see on the right hand side it says host name, which is set to localhost. So we know this is the right option. We have to go in. Hit enter. Here on the first option, you don't see that. To change it, you have to come down to where it says DNS configuration. And right here you see it's set to automatic. We'll go ahead and hit enter. and it says obtain DNS server address and hostname automatically. This is what we had as if you want your ESXi server to pick the hostname itself. So now I'm going to use the following DNS server address and hostname. So move your cursor down, hit spacebar, and then come down. And right here where it says hostname, it says localhost. I want you to pick ESXi1. Now go ahead and hit enter. Hit escape to exit, and it will ask you to apply changes and restart management network, and you say yes and restart management network, and you're going to see right here in the top right corner ESXi hostname has been set to ESXi1. Beautiful. Now you could go ahead and hit escape again to log out. And let's go back. First hit Control and Alt to get out and get your cursor back. Let's go back in here, and I want you to restart or refresh or reload. Okay, it has been reloaded. And here you're going to see in the host ESXi1.local domain. You got to specify the fully qualified domain name, but since this is our lab, we will leave it as local domain. If you're working for company abc.com, then most likely your host name or fully qualified domain name will be esxi1.abc.com. I'll see you in the next lecture. Hello everyone, let's go over the VM snapshots. What is a VM snapshot? A snapshot preserves the state and data of a virtual machine at a specific point in time. So the state includes the virtual machine's power state, for example, power on, power off, or suspended. The data includes all of the files that make up the virtual machine. This includes disk, memory, and other devices such as virtual network interfaces cards. So anytime you take a snapshot, it basically takes a picture of your virtual machine and it saves it. Anytime you need it, you could revert back to that snapshot. A lot of developers use that for their code testing. System administrators use it whenever they need to patch a machine or upgrade a virtual machine with the operating system. They take a snapshot. And the beauty of snapshot is if anything goes wrong after you patch or upgrade, you could always revert back. Also, when you have a file or when you have a few files or folder on your virtual machine and somehow you delete it, and if you had a snapshot, you could actually again revert back to the snapshot and restore those files that were lost. Keep one thing in mind: do not confuse snapshot with the backups. I know a lot of people take a snapshot as a backup in their environment, which is not a good practice. And of course, VMware does not suggest that we take snapshots as a backup of a virtual machine. If you need to take backups, there are many tools are out there. There are many backup solutions that you should be using to perform the backup of your virtual machine. All right, let's take a look at how we could take a snapshot and how or what are the different ways we could use to revert back to a snapshot. So we have our vSphere client open, and we're going to use Windows 1 machine as our example to create a snapshot. First, I'll go into the Windows machine console right here, and I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call it Seinfeld. In that folder, I'm going to create a file. Let's call it Jerry. And again, I'll create one more file, and let's call it George. Now we have this folder, and in that folder we have two files. Now, let's say we take a snapshot today. So we go here, right click, snapshots, and click take snapshot. you have to put a name. I will put name anything that will make you remember when you took it. So I always recommend that you put date and time. So I'll put snapshot dash day, month, year. But in this case, you got to put the actual day, month, and year, so this way you remember. If you want to put a description, um, this day I created a folder called Seinfeld. Just some description. If you want to leave it empty, that's fine. Now, this option, snapshot the virtual machine's memory, when you take this, when you have this check mark, it will take the snapshot with the memory as if you have the running processes. If you have some windows open, whatever the exact state of your machine right now, it will take that exact same snapshot. But of course, this will take some more space on your disk. So I wouldn't recommend that, but again, in some cases, depending on the requirement, you could do that. As soon as you uncheck this, you have a second option. QS guest file system needs VMware tools installed. Now, QSing guest file system is a more of a backup uh, terminology or backup technique where the snapshot actually goes to the disk and make sure all the processes that are writing to disk finish writing it. So this way you don't have unstable disk, the data on the disk. If you click on this, of course, this is going to take a lot longer for it to stop processing all the processes running. So the best way that I always recommend that you take without snapshot memory or QSing the guest file system. Again, going back to the same question, it all depends what you want to do. I missed T here, so I'm just going to put T, and I'll click on Take Snapshot. All right, right here it says all snapshots from virtual machine Windows 1 were successfully deleted. This one I deleted earlier, but this is the one that we are looking at, successfully created on virtual machine Windows 1. Beautiful. To verify it, you could right click again, go to snapshot and manage snapshots. You're going to see your snapshot is right here. And after the snapshot, you are in this state where it says you are here. Now let's close this out. Now I'll go back to my Windows machine and let's say I'll delete this folder, Seinfeld. It is deleted. It is still in the recycle bin right here, but what we'll do is we'll empty the recycle bin. So there's no way we could get that folder back now. Now, the good thing is that if we have the snapshot and we realize, oh, by mistake we deleted that folder, we need it back. So you go to your Windows 1 machine, right click, snapshot, and right here it says restore snapshot. And it says the current state of the virtual machine will be lost unless it is saved in a snapshot. Revert to the latest, most recent snapshot. We don't really need to preserve the state of this virtual machine as of right now. So just go ahead and click restore. All right. Virtual machine Windows 1 successfully restored it to the latest snapshot. All right. So let's go. And as soon as you click on restore, it will shut down the VM and apply all the changes that you had in the snapshot. So go ahead and click power on. Okay, see it says applying settings. Now go ahead and click on this, which is all control delete. And go ahead put in your password. All right, right here you're gonna see our folder is back. The one we lost it and the one we accidentally deleted it. Just make sure we have the files in it that we created, Jerry and George. Perfect. So that's the main purpose of doing the snapshot. You could also go back to the snapshot option and you're going to see you're going to find manage snapshot as well, which will tell you how many snapshots you have. You could take as many as you want, but remember the more snapshots you're going to have, the impact of creating so many snapshots, it will make your machine, a virtual machine, slower and slower. So try not to have too many snapshots, and only take it when you need it, when you're doing some testing on the virtual machine. Then another option, snapshot, and says consolidate disks. What it means is if you have multiple snapshots, let's say you have 5 snapshots, when you click on consolidate disk, it will actually take all the snapshots, put it together, and bring you to the state that it is right now. Apply all the changes that you had it before. So that's pretty much about the snapshot. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll see you in the next lecture. The benefits of vCenter, let's take a look at what is a VMware vCenter. vCenter Server is a centralized management utility for VMware and is used to manage virtual machines, multiple ESXi hosts, and all dependent components from a single centralized location. And that's the definition. I got it straight from the Wikipedia. And to summarize it one more time in simple language, we need vCenter as a single glass of pane, as one dashboard where we could manage all our multiple ESXi server, all the virtual machines that are within those ESXi server from one central location. It supports functions like HA, which is high availability, which allows you to migrate virtual machines from one ESXi to another ESXi. Now, this HA is an automatic functionality where vCenter detects the failure of a ESXi and it will move the VMs to another ESXi host on its own. DRS is another feature which stands for Distributed Resource Scheduler. By the way, we will talk about that later. It actually looks at which ESXi server has more resources or lesser resources, and based on that comparison it will move the virtual machines around. vMotion is a feature that allows you to migrate virtual machine from one host to another while they are live, up and running. VDSV distribution switches, which allows you to set your networking of ESXi servers all at the same time. vSAN is virtual storage. It has one everything that you could virtualize on your storage side. Then it has SSO, single sign-on, meaning you could sign on to your vCenter and all the ESXi server from one Active Directory if you have it, or any kind of directory services that you have, or authentication services you have. Also, vCenter Server offers Update Manager if you want to patch your ESXi server, or if you wanted to patch your vCenter or any of the product of vCenter, you could actually use this built-in Update Manager to update it as you have the production system up and running without any interruption. It allows you to have host profiles. Like if you are installing 10 ESXi servers, you could install one and create a host profile out of it, and then basically slap on those profiles onto other 9 ESXi server. The process becomes so fast. Then it also offers Realize Orchestrator. Orchestration allows you to automate things, and many more benefits that we'll talk about later on. vCenter first came out as a software that was installed on Windows operating system. Yes, I remember my days when I had to install the vCenter. It was a software on a Windows server, I believe that time from 2008 and then 2012. You would install it and then you would run that application from that Windows machine, and that Windows machine, that application will manage the ESXi. Now, a lot of times we needed a redundancy in vCenter too, so we would have to set up 2 Windows server. Not to mention the licensing costs and all that stuff. It was too much. Now, the newer version of vCenter comes pre-packaged as an appliance. Now, what is an appliance? Appliance is something that has an operating system already installed, and that application, that software already installed on top of that. And then you could install that on the ESXi. So it's a VM. You create a VM within your ESXi, and then you install vCenter on it. So now you're probably thinking that how come you are creating a vCenter within the ESXi, and vCenter is the one that actually manages that ESXi. So if that ESXi server dies, the vCenter dies with it, right? The whole support, the whole centralized location is gone. Well, that is definitely true. If you are thinking that, great question. But here's the thing, as I said before, it has vCenter also gives you HA functionality. So it actually migrates VM from one ESXi to another. And vCenter itself is a virtual machine. So HA will actually migrate vCenter from one server to another as well. That's the beauty. It's like a nested type of environment, virtual machine within a virtual machine, and managing its own environment. Anyway, guys, this is what I wanted to talk about, exactly what vCenter is and why there is a need for the vCenter. It is very important for you to understand, and then as we go along, you will have a better understanding when we're going through the download and installation of vCenter. I'll see you in the next lecture. Hello, everyone. Let's do some fun part. Yes. In this video, we are going to install the vCenter appliance. And what are the things we need for it? There's some information that we have to have beforehand, and that is some resources. We need to make sure our ESXi server where we are deploying this vCenter has at least 10 gig of RAM, 2 CPU, and 250 gig of hard disk. And if you remember, we have given 12 gig of RAM to our second ESXi server, 2 CPU, and 300 gig of disk. Now you're probably thinking, hey Imran, we have given 2 CPU to the ESXi, and now we're going to give those same 2 CPU to vCenter? Well, yes, technically it's not gonna matter because the CPU will only be utilized what it is needed. But if you are in a production environment, then definitely it should matter. If you have 2 CPU, don't assign that 2 CPU to something else. So make sure you have enough CPU. IP address, we're going with .7 because we given 5 to ESXi1. We're given 6 to ESXi2, and now we're going to give 7 to the vCenter. Subnet mask stays the same. Gateway ends with 2. DNS is the same. Hostname, we will go with simple hostname vCenter, and domain name is vSphere.local. All right. Before we do the installation, let's make sure that 19.7 IP is not given to anybody else and it's not pingable. And I'm sure by now you know how to do that. Go to your command line and ping 192.168.19.5 to make sure that the 5 ESXi1 is pingable. It is. Control C. Ping 6, it is pingable. Control C. And now ping 7. Aha, 7 is now pingable. It means it is available. Beautiful. Control C to exit out of it. So we confirmed that. You could go ahead and close this window, or you could leave it to check once installation is completed to see if it's pingable. Now, we will follow our second method of doing the installation, which is to run it through the UI installer from the Windows. All right, so we have our folder open right here. Again, our ISO has been mounted on G drive, and we're going to the folder vcsa-ui installer, and my operating system is Windows 32. And right here in that folder, there's this installer application that we will run. Go ahead and double click. All right, vCenter Server Appliance 6.5 installer. It is very similar to 6.7 as well. Install, this is the option we will follow. Upgrade, if you are upgrading from older version to newer version. Migrate from an existing vCenter server for Windows to a vCenter appliance. You remember I told you that if you have a vCenter that used to run Windows, if you wanted to migrate that from that Windows environment to appliance, you could use this option. Restore from a previously created vCenter server appliance backup. If you have a backup, you could restore simply here, and this option is used if your vCenter has somehow crashed are gone offline and you cannot recover it, then you could come to this restore option. All right, let's go ahead and with the install. Let me close this window from the back, minimize it actually. Okay, introduction. This installer allows you to install a vCenter Server Appliance 6.5 or a Platform Service Controller Appliance 6.5. Deploy appliance. Installing appliance is a two-stage process. The first stage involves deploying a new appliance to the target vCenter server or ESXi host. The second stage completes the setup of the deployed appliance. Click Next to proceed with stage 1. License terms, agree, accept. If you have to read through it, go ahead and read through it. Click Next. All right. For more information on deploy types, refer to the vSphere 6.5 documentation. There are two different type of options you have available. Embedded Platform Services Controller, which is this option, and the second one is if you want to run vCenter server and PSC, which is Platform Services Controller, completely two different separate instances, meaning running on different virtual machine, then you could pick this option. But for us, we're doing lab. We'll make it. We could keep it sweet and simple, and therefore we'll leave the default option selected. Next, ESXi host or vCenter server name. Okay, so this is the ESXi server IP address. So where are we deploying this vCenter? We are deploying on 192.168.19.6. .6 is the second ESXi server. Now before you put in the IP address, you need to make sure your second ESXi server is up and running. For me, I have the ESXi server, which is 19.6. It's up and running. Good. Minimize that. Port leave it default. Username. This is the username for your ESXi server. Root and provide the password. SSL certificate. Just click yes. Now it went to the ESXi server and it confirmed yes, the ESXi server is there. VM name. We were going to pick just simple vCenter. Root password. This is the password I was telling you that you need to set up in order to log in as an SSH to the vCenter, which runs on Linux. There's a certain requirement for the password. You gotta have a character, uppercase, number. So make sure you meet that requirement. Click Next. Deployment size, tiny. Remember we talked about that when we were doing the OVA deployment. And this is exactly what it's telling us. The tiny deployment is something we want. If you want to go with small, there are different resource requirement. For small, you have 4 CPU, 16 gig of memory, 290 gig storage, and it could hold up to 100 hosts and 1000 VMs. For us, we're going with the lab, so we'll pick tiny. Next, the data store. Capacity is 292, free 291. All we need is 250, so we're good. Enable thin disk mode. So a thin provision disk does not pre-allocate all of the space specified for the disk. As I said before, if you pick thin, then it will only take what is needed. It will not fill up the whole 250 gig right away. So I will go ahead and check that. Install on a new virtual SAN cluster containing the target host. So we are not dealing with the new virtual SAN right now, so leave that default. Click Next. The network is, you just have one, so you have to pick that one. IPv4 or 6, leave it default 4. We're going to pick static and system name. Remember this. When you click here, it says vCenter server uses FQDN or IP address as the system name. If you leave the optional FQDN field empty, the IP address will be used as a system name. Now, we do not have DNS system in our lab. Therefore, we are going to give it an IP address. So the IP address right here will become the system name. So we will leave that empty. If you put in some name here, let's say vCenter or something, then your installation will go to your DNS server and it will try to resolve that name. But again, you don't have DNS server, so leave that out. IP address. Remember we picked an IP address and that was 192.168.19.7. Subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Default gateway 192.168.19.2. DNS server is the same one, 192.168.19.2. Scroll down. HTTP port 80, HTTPS port 443. Leave that default. Click next. All right, deployment details. Again, you have to confirm and make sure you're not putting any wrong information. It is going to the target ESXi host 19.16, and it will have an IP address of 192.168.19.7. Beautiful. Go ahead and click finish. Okay. Deploy vCenter server with embedded platform services controller stage 1, deploying the appliance. This is going to take anywhere from 5 minutes to maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes. It depends on your system resources, how fast is your system. I will be fast forwarding it. Once it's done, I'll come back. Okay, so the stage 1 has been completed. Now to continue to the next stage, just simply go ahead and click continue. Next, vCenter Server Appliance Installation Overview. Synchronize time with NTP server. Now we don't have NTP server in our lab, so what we're going to do is we're going to use our gateway, the default gateway, as our NTP server. But if you are in a corporate environment and you do have a dedicated NTP server, then please put that IP address right here. Otherwise, we'll just put in 192.168.19.2. SSH access, meaning do you want to access SSH into vCenter server? We could enable it. Next. All right, create a new SSO domain. Single sign-on domain name. So we will leave it default, which is vSphere.local. Single sign-on password. Now you're probably thinking, hey, we are not using Active Directory, but that's okay. By default, it will ask you that information. So site, you could put it lab. If you want to know more about site, you could click here. The site name must conform to the following requirement. These are the information of the site. The domain name must not exceed 63. So that's fine. We'll leave that as is. Now, if you're in a corporate environment and you do have an Active Directory or some kind of authentication service, then you could click on Join Existing SSO Domain. Go ahead and click Next. Join the VMware Customer Experience Improvement Program. We don't need that right now because we're just going through our training sessions. Click Next. Confirm the information. Perfect, looks good, and click on Finish. You will not be able to pause or stop the install from completing once it's started. Click OK to continue or cancel to stop installing. Go ahead and click OK. And let's wait for it to finish. Okay, so you have successfully set up this appliance. 100% complete. vCenter server appliance setup has been completed successfully. Click on the link below to get started. Press close to exit. Appliance getting started page, which is the HTTPS, the IP address that we've given :443. We will get to it later on, but now, right now, as you notice, your appliance is completed. To verify it, you could just go open your browser. Let's close this browser. Let's open the one that I had it before. And here I'm going to put in the IP address 192.168.19.7. And it's going to bring me back to this warning page. I click advance and accept the risk and continue. There you go. Beautiful. Now you know that your vCenter has been successfully installed because you could access this vSphere page. Another thing I want you to notice is that if you go to your ESXi server 2, where you did the deployment on, log into that ESXi server. And here you're going to notice your virtual machine is right here. This is your vCenter server. And it tells you the use space is 13.92 gig, even though we've given 250 gig. It's not taking because we did thin provisioning. The host memory, it is using 9.9 gig. So that's where you have confirmed that this ESXi server has this one virtual machine. And our other ESXi server, which was ESXi 1, it has two virtual machines right here when you click on it, Windows 1 and Linux 1. Alright guys, that's great. If you are up to this point with me where you have completed the vCenter installation, congratulations to you. I will see you in the next lecture. Actually divided different functionality into different categories. Category 1 is about the inventory, which will talk about how the inventory is managed in terms of hosts and VMs. Then we'll talk about operations and policies, administration, plugins for installation, and watch how-to videos. There are no watch how-to videos as per to that comes with a vCenter, but it will redirect you to what exactly you're looking for. All right, so let's go to the vCenter home page. I have it open right here. And you notice every time you log into the vCenter home page, it actually brings you to this page where you'll see on the left-hand side the navigation pane with vCenter and the data center, and then the hosts that are associated or are added to the data center. Now, if you go up all the way where you see this blue ribbon, there is this icon that looks like a home, and it has the three bars, which is like a menu. So as you hover your mouse over, you'll get a drop-down menu. So now you could go ahead and simply click on home. This is the home page that I'm talking about, and that's the vCenter home page. The very first category is about the host and cluster, which we were before. So if you click on it, and it will bring you back to that same page. You could click back right here and go back to home page. VM and templates, virtual machines that you have built. Templates are those which any virtual machine that you want to convert as a template, then you could spin off other virtual machines, the new virtual machines that you're going to build later on, you could spin off of that. Storage, if you want to attach new storage. Networking, just like storage, we have networking. If you want to work on the networking or add more network ports, you could go here. And then we have content library. Content library, as when you come in to each of these categories or these objects, you're gonna see a little quick definition with each object. So it says right here, the content library is a repository of VM templates, VApps, and other files such as ISO images, scripts, etc. A template is a copy of a VM and can include a guest operating system. So basically, any type of information that you need to have on your shelf, which will allow you to build your VM a lot faster. That will be part of your content library. It could be the ISO image, for example, for Windows 2016 or for Red Hat Linux. So they'll have an ISO image. And then scripts, meaning anything that you want to do as a post provisioning. After you build, you want to do post provisioning, meaning you want to install certain other applications or operating system applications. You could do that as part of the script. But all those ISO and scripts can actually stay on this content library. So that's what this option is for. And then global inventory list, meaning everything that you need to see, you could just click here and you'll see all your inventory right in one pane. Let's go back and let's go to the operation policies. Number one is the task console. Anything that you kick off, let's say you are adding a host, you're creating a VM, deleting, powering on, all of that is part of the console, task console. As you're going to notice, see right here is check notification, remove host, add host. Everything is part of the task. Whereas the next one is event console. Any type of event that's been generated by vCenter will be logged in here. It's just like a log in event logs in Windows or syslog in Linux. Let's go back to our home. Then you have VM storage policy. If you define VM storage policy here, let's say if you assign a storage to a VM while you're building it and you want to have some policy already there, for example, if is it going to be thin provisioning, is it going to be thick provisioning, how much storage it needs, all that setting can be predefined in the policies. Customization specification manager. This customization can be done while you are building a VM. So the way it is done is it's just like a script, as if you have a script that does the post provisioning. If you create a customization specification manager, let's say you go ahead and click here, right here, and let's say every time you need to build a Windows machine, so you pick Windows or Linux, specify the customization spec name. So for me, as an example, we'll do Windows 2016. So I want this specification or this customization every time I build a Windows 2000 machine. I want this customization to be applied to that Windows machine. So click next. And the name of the organization. So if you don't want to add that name all the time as a repetitive task to your Windows machine, you could specify here the organization name, set computer name. You could change that as well, whatever the computer name that you want to specify. Enter Windows license, set administrative password, time zone, run once. It could be multiple times or once you could run that. Configure networks. You could specify its default gateway. You could specify the IP address, or if you want to have a static or DHCP. All these settings that you see, basically these are part of the installation or post provisioning. When I say post provisioning, meaning provisioning anything that happens after you build a VM. All right, so perhaps we will actually go over this customization in more detail later on. So let me go back to the home screen again. Then update manager, it's that simple. You need the update manager to update your host or vCenter. Host profiles, which we have already covered. If you don't remember, host profiles are the profiles like if you have one host, you create a profile out of it, and next time you build a new host, you slap on that profile on it. Let's go to administration. You have roles. Every user in vCenter has to be part of a role. Are they administrators? Are they read-only users? Are they managers? So they would have roles, and each role would have different permissions based on their role. So you could actually manage it right from here. System configuration, any type of changes that you need to make on the vCenter. Like if you want to stop a process of vCenter, you could do it from here. Licensing, very straightforward. You want to add or renew the license, you could update here. Customer experience improvement, if you want to be part of the customer experience improvement, whatever that you do, your data will be sent out to the VMware so they could go through that data and enhance the upcoming new products. You could be part of that. Then vRealize operation manager, basically it's not a add-in feature of vCenter. This, if you want to click on this, this is going to ask you, do you want to deploy a vRealize Operation Manager? But what is vRealize Operation Manager? If you click on it, it will have a very quick definition right here. It says vRealize Operation Manager collects performance data from each object at every level of your virtual environment. So it's a data collector. Based on the data collector, it actually generates reports for you. It also has enhanced monitoring tools built into this. So it's not out of the box thing that's available to you. You would have to deploy right here. Click on vRealize Operation Deploy, and then you have to specify the OVA file. Anyway, the option is there, so it will be a lot easier and quicker to deploy one. Coming down plugins, we have two plugins for vRealize Orchestrator Hybrid Cloud Manager. They are not the product is not there, but the plugin is there in case you want to add that product to it. It will be a lot easier and seamless, the integration between both. And the last one I wanted to talk about is watch how-to videos. Just click on it and it will take you to the VMware website and to the section where you could actually view some of the videos that are really, really useful to you. So let's say if you want to learn more about the host, you could come here and start looking into what are the hosts, how you create host DR and HA. And this is, of course, this is very professional videos as well and will definitely help you. So please do spend some time here as well. And then when we go back to this, this actually covers everything that they have in vCenter homepage. So if you have any questions, let me know.
If you want to learn more about Linux, check out my best-selling course on Linux at udemy.com, or you could go straight to my website utclsolutions.com and you will find the exact same course there.